Mike Owens here, and today I'm joined by Kyle Daukaus, who returns to action the 3rd of December, facing Eryk Anders at UFC Orlando. Kyle, always a pleasure to get your time. How are things with you today?
This is good, man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it, man.
The pleasure's all mine. As I said there, and I spoke to, obviously, your big brother Chris yesterday. Quite a tough schedule for the Daukaus brothers. 2 fights within the space of a week.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk me through who you think has got the easier end of the stick, and who do you think's got the harder job in terms of going first or going second?
I don't know. It's tough. It's tough, really. I mean, as far as stylistically matching up, I would say, I have the quote unquote easier matchup in a way because Eryk really isn't known for his ground game. He's not really too heavy of a jiu-jitsu guy. So that's something that kind of plays more in my advantage than my brother. My brother is fighting Rozenstruik, and Rozenstruik is a striker. And my brother's a striker as well. So I think that's obviously a tougher matchup for my brother as well. Plus, it's heavyweight, so like you can get hit by one of those guys and it can just be lights out, as opposed to middleweights who you can either fight guys that are one punch artists or guys that really don't have a lot of power either. So.
I asked Chris about the Rozenstruik fight yesterday,
Yeah,
and I kind of asked him what he thinks the keys of victory are coming off the losses to Blades and Derek Lewis, and he said that in the UFC he hasn't shown his wrestling or his grappling ability.
yeah.
Now, do you anticipate that wrestling or grappling will be a big part of Chris getting the W over Rozenstruik?
I mean, it would be stupid of me to say no, honestly. I don't want to give away his game plan or anything like that. My brother has very good striking, so we're not too worried about striking. We're not too. I mean, we have to be cautious. Obviously, you have to be cautious everywhere in MMA. But I would say he hasn't shown a ton of grappling at all in his whole career that he's had. He had one fight prior in CFFC when him and the guy. It was crazy because him and the guy were both heavyweights and they're both going for leg locks the whole fight. So it was weird to see as well because both of them weren't too experienced in leg locks either. So it was a bit odd to see. But yeah, he never really showcased any of his wrestling ability or grappling ability or jiu-jitsu at all, from bottom or top his whole career. And going into the UFC and being in the UFC, you have to show your whole game. It's not just you can kind of get lazy and get to focusing on one thing and being knocked out, or getting knockouts and stuff like that, and striking and standing and stuff like that. And that's just, we're trying to switch it up for him. We're trying to get him to just be a full mixed martial artist and go showcase that for this fight. So I'm excited to see him really push the pace and get in Rozenstruik's face and showcase some of that grappling and jiu-jitsu, but also, showcase how well his striking is too against a top tier striker like Rozenstruik.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's turn the conversation back to your own fight. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, 3rd of December, back in action against Eryk Anders. What does Eryk Anders, as an upcoming opponent, do well? What do you think are kind of the key strengths in his game?
What he does well, I mean, he pressures his opponents very well. He's very one of those real like brute guys that he's not really too technical as far as cage work, clinch work, striking, or jiu-jitsu. He's kind of just one of them brute guys. And I've said this multiple times before. No disrespect to him, but I think he's really just an athlete. I don't really think he's a mixed martial artist, so to say. I mean, obviously everybody that fights is a mixed martial artist in a way, but I think he's more of just an athlete that's gifted with strength and power, as opposed to somebody like me who, has technique and has to use their technique because we're not so physically stronger as the majority of the guys. But yeah, I think he does really just kind of push the pace. He's really in his opponent's face a lot. His distance management is kind of very good too. His defense is very well. He really leans back a lot, so you might think he's closer than he appears to be. But yeah, I think that's kind of the only thing he really does well is striking, pushing the pace on the guys, making sure he's in the guys' faces and just kind of making the fight dirty as well. He really, really does that very well as well.
So with that being said, and this is kind of something that I almost presume you would say in many ways, is a key to victory for you keeping this a mixed martial arts fight and keeping it technical, and in a way stopping Anders getting you into a brawl and getting you into that group fight, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not really going to go out there and solely, just focus on the takedown or anything like that. Obviously, if the chance comes where I can take him down, I will. And I don't think he really can defend it or anything like that. If I have the chance to put him against the cage, beat him against the cage, I will. If I have to strike the whole time, I'll strike and beat him there. I really feel like I'm going into this fight. I'm very confident in my ability to kind of just take the fight wherever I want it to be. I'm going to keep the fight standing as long as I can, to try to showcase, my striking as well. I've been working with a striking coach recently, so he's really changed my game. His name's Jordan Adesanya. He's an Italian kickboxer. So I've been doing a lot of stuff through Zoom with him. He's been sending me a lot of combinations, just making sure I'm getting my drilling in there. So yeah, I'm very confident in the fight, going my way and just me controlling the fight the whole time.
100%. What's very interesting as well, Kyle, is your upcoming opponent is an actor, is a TV star.
I recently heard that. Yeah.
Have you seen Cobra Kai season 5, episode 1, in which Eryk Anders appears?
No, I have not. I really don't watch any of those shows. But it's funny because a lot of people ask me who I'm fighting, and I say Eryk Anders, and they're trying to think of him, and I'm like, he was in Cobra Kai, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about, the MMA guy. I was like, yeah, probably, but I haven't seen the episode. I heard that like he loses a fight or something and eats a jalapeno or something like that.
I think he's the bouncer or something like that in like a Mexican boxing club or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, hey, hats off to him because he can act, but I couldn't do that. I'm terrible at that stuff.
One thing I also think is very interesting, or a topic that I want to discuss with you today, is this is the first UFC fight card post Thanksgiving, which I know is obviously a massive celebration over there in the States. I know it's probably difficult for you at weight cut. Is that something that's going to be difficult for you to miss, the celebration of Thanksgiving?
I mean, I'll be here with my family, so we'll be celebrating that way. But as far as like eating a bunch of crap that I would usually eat, I'm not going to eat. I'll have to portion everything out to make sure I'm good. I'm kind of ahead of schedule as far as my weight, so I can eat like a little bit more than usual. Although I will be like a week out from weigh-ins. So, minimize the carbs as much as I can, and just trying to focus on the turkey and proteins that I can eat.
Have you got a big cut to middleweight? I mean, I can't really gauge your body because you're obviously quite tall at 6'3", but then you have quite a skinny frame. Is it a difficult cut to 185?
It's tough to say because sometimes my cuts are bad, sometimes my cuts are good. The heaviest I've gotten, like at the start of this camp, I was about 220, 225. So that's, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that is as far as kilos. 97, isn't it like 97?
I don't know. I work in pounds because I cover.
Oh, you work in pounds. That's right. Yeah. So I don't even know what pounds it would be. But yeah, I walk around. I try to at least make sure that I'm strict and in shape. Around 210, 215. After my last fight, I did a surgery, so I kind of got out of shape a little bit. But like for right now, I'm walking around, 200, 205, and that's usually what I show up on Tuesday of fight week. So it's, it's a 20-pound cut on fight week. But as far as like right now, it's going to be an easy cut for me because I'm not even drinking 2 gallons of water yet. I'm not water loading or anything like that. I'm taking in as much salt as I possibly can. I'm taking in carbs, good carbs and stuff like that. So I don't think it's going to be a hard cut at all.
100%. Obviously, as I mentioned, you and Chris fighting within a week of each other. I can only imagine the training schedule that you two guys are going through and the wars that you probably have in sparring. What is it like? Because we've talked about this in previous interviews, particularly when I spoke to both you and Chris about preparing together and being in the battle together. But what is it like coming up together in terms of peaking at the right time in terms of those sparring rounds and kind of having this journey side by side?
Obviously it's always better, I feel, when we're in fight camp together like this. Just because our looks are kind of that much better. Because, he's, like you said, we're both peaking at certain times. So it's kind of like we're both at the top of our game and we're both competing against each other in the gym. And it's good to see who gets the better of one person one day and who gets the better of another person the other day. Sparring is always back and forth. It's always very, very, very back and forth. But it's always good to kind of just not only have myself accountable, but have him accountable as well and be accountable for him. Just because he fights the week after me. Yeah. If we fought on the same card, I'm sure it would be, that much, bigger of a situation as far as like peaking and stuff like that in training. but he does fight the week after me. So I think it's like what I usually do is this Sunday will be like my last sparring session, and then next week, the following week, I'll take sparring off just to minimize like brain damage, all that stuff that we take in. You know what I mean during sparring. Just give myself some rest. So he'll have the 2 weeks prior. So the week we fly out will be his last sparring session, and he'll have the week that I'm at the in my fight, and then we'll have the following week. So it's always good. We have guys coming with us that'll help us work for that whole week as well. So and we've done this before. My brother fought Shamil in Vegas, and then I fought Holland at the Apex back-to-back weeks. My brother fought first that week, and I fought second. So it's good to have it switched up. I'm fighting first this time, and he's fighting second the next week.
Yeah, 100%. If we talk about your last fight very quickly, the Roman Dolidze fight, obviously that was a fight that never went your way, and obviously it was a fight that ended. Let's be honest, ended a lot quicker than we both would have liked. What, obviously, coming off such a defeat, excuse me, what, if anything, can you take from that and kind of build into a positive in your own career?
I don't know. I've said this. I said this before as well. The fight happened so quickly that I didn't really even feel like I fought. Like, even fight week kind of felt weird. Like, everything kind of felt weird to me. Not saying that like I'm big on like the feel of things or anything like that, or like a person that like deals with like energy and stuff like that. I just feel like, it's fight day. I have to go out there and fight. Whether I had a good week or a bad week, I have to go out there and fight and perform. But yeah, I mean, the fight happened so quickly that when I got into the back of the arena waiting for the ambulance, I was talking to my cornerman. I was like, I don't even feel like I fought. Like, I went out there, pretty much got knee in the face, and then that was it. And I was like, it felt like, to me, it felt like it was 20 seconds, but it was like maybe a minute and 10, like if that.
Yeah.
So as far as like dealing with the loss, like it's a lot easier for me just to like, deal with the loss because I got caught. That's what happens. Obviously, I could have switched a little bit of things up. I mean, I guess, but like I felt all right going into it. We collided heads in the beginning, and I was like, "Oh, here we go again. Another headbutt. Another thing's gonna happen again." But that was the only my only real concern. But as far as like taking anything away from it, I can't really, like, in my honest opinion, I can't take anything away from it because I had no chance to kind of develop anything or take anything in really. But I mean, I guess I can just kind of control, obviously, what I can control, and that's just me going into this fight and kind of moving past that fight. As far as prior losses have happened, like my Hawes fight and my Brendan Allen fight, those fights were really tough on me as far as like mental and physical, just because there were wars for 3 rounds, and there was so much I could have changed in those fights that I really wanted to change that for this fight being so quickly, I couldn't really change a lot. So I've really haven't thought about the fight. Obviously it sucks to lose, and it sucks seeing his highlight, like when he fought Hawes. It sucks seeing a highlight of me there, but like I'm not like looking at it and be like, damn, like everybody's gonna be on me about that. Like it's not to me, it's not a big deal. Losing is losing. It happens in the sport. Multiple champions have lost, and it's just about coming back. And this fight, I plan on making a big statement. So.
No, of course, and I appreciate your honesty in that answer.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you talked there about the energy of fight week, and obviously this was the first fight that you had in the UFC with an active crowd, which I think we've talked about in our previous conversations, it's kind of strange that a fight has gone so long without fighting in front of a UFC crowd. How did that feel? And I understand that the fight ended so quickly, but how did having your first fight in front of a first UFC fight in front of an active crowd feel for you?
I mean, it was fine. Like, I think I built it up in my head to be too much of what it was, to be honest. Like a lot of guys do, and I think I built it up to be way too much than it was. I got so caught in the moment of being there, like taking in like the fans and the energy and everything like that like I wasn't too solely focused in on making sure that I was there to fight. Like all fight week, I was like, man, I'm fighting in front of a crowd. Like, it's gonna be great fighting in front of the crowd, in front of the crowd, in front of the crowd. And like my whole head was like crowd, and it wasn't fight. So I think that kind of played a little part into it. But I kind of took a step back for this camp, and I could give 2 shits about the crowd for this fight. I can give, I could care less who's there. I could care less if there was one person there, if there was nobody there. The crowd is not going to be at all a problem to me, or a focus. I'm solely focusing on getting into the octagon and doing what I have to do and get the job done.
You obviously come into the UFC with a lot of hype, a lot of momentum coming in. I think it was undefeated records if memory serves, and
Yep.
I think you've kind of almost struggled to build on that UFC momentum in many ways. I don't think
Yeah.
you've had back-to-back losses or back-to-back wins. It's kind of been the Holland fight being the Holland fight, win,
Yeah.
loss, win, loss, win, loss. What
Yeah.
is the key for you to be able to build momentum in this UFC middleweight division?
Just self-belief in myself. I really think. I've gone back to, once I got signed to the UFC, I was like, all right, like I got signed to the UFC. You can either just be here, like now I've thought this now, like you can either just be here and be one of these guys that goes 3-3 and then gets cut, and then I have to go get a job next week. You know what I mean? Or I can be one of these guys like an Oliveira or a Poirier who have, they've struggled throughout their career, but at the end of it, they've won the championship belts. They've been a part of the lowest lows of the sport and been a part of the highest highs. And I feel like that's something I've taken away from my career. Like for the start of this camp, I was like, all right, dude, like this is do or die. And I have to make a statement after this fight to continue to make sure that I stay in the UFC as well. Nobody wants to lose back-to-back fights, obviously. And, I've never really had the history of losing back-to-back fights, which is a good thing, in my opinion, but it's also a bad thing because I can just kind of be stagnant and be lazy and be like, all right, well, I lost my last one, but I'm going to win this one. Like, no, like I got to get my shit straight and make sure that I just win every single next fight. I've been very serious with myself, and I've been too focused in on just being in the UFC and just making sure that like, oh, I'm here, so like I'm a UFC fighter. Like that's not the person that I am. Like I had the goal of being in the UFC and being a champion when I was out of the UFC, and I think that's what pushed me to get to where I was at 9-0. And I feel like that's where I am now with this fight. And throughout this camp, I've had the energy that I've had prior to the UFC. I've had the same mentality that I've had prior to the UFC as well. I feel like I've gotten that fire back in a way. Not saying that like I lost like the fighting fire or anything like that. I love fighting and I love mixed martial arts and I love being in the UFC and I love, every part of it. I even love the losing part because the losing makes you better. Without losses, you wouldn't appreciate wins, and without the without the highs of wins, you wouldn't appreciate the losses in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I'm in a good place mentally and physically, and I'm ready to go.
Can I ask so very quickly? I want to change the subject, and I do appreciate your honesty in some of those answers. But the bicep tattoos, have you got tattoos on both biceps now?
Yeah, well, I've had these for a while. Yeah, I've had both of them for a while.
It's strength and courage.
Yeah, I've had this for a while. I had them. I honestly got them when I was, I think after I graduated high school. I think I got them, and I was just like young, and I was like, man, like I need strength, and I need courage to get throughout life, and these are just things that I need. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna get tattooed. But obviously, if I were to go back, I would kind of change the tattoos that I get. But I mean, they are.
You're smiling a little bit awkwardly.
Yeah, right. It's a little cringy in a way. But I mean, yeah, I got tattoos. I have those. I have one on my back for my grandfather. I have like a Scandinavian thing here with Odin and a Viking ship, Viking compass, Odin's ravens, and then an eye, like an all-seeing eye. And then I have a tattoo of my dog on my leg that passed away recently. So I'm taking a step back from the tattoos. I told myself I'm not getting another tattoo until I get the UFC belt. So no more tattoos until then.
Speaking about the UFC belt in your division recently changed hands just as lately as last Saturday night. Can you talk to me about your reaction seeing Alex Pereira KO Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title?
I was really surprised after Adesanya, because I was there, so we were all there, so it was a wild night, of course, all in all. But after that first round, at the end of the first round when he rocked him, I was like, all right, this dude's like done with. Like it should last another minute and a half into the second round. But something happened to where like it was like a hard reset for Pereira, and he was just like, all right, like it's a new fight for these next 4 rounds. I think it played into Pereira's stylistically, obviously, because they're both kickboxers and whatnot. Izzy does not have the greatest wrestling or jiu-jitsu, whatsoever. It was wild to see, him clip him at the end and finish them. And it just shows that anything can happen in the sport, regardless of, how many fights you have in the UFC or how many fights you don't have or how experienced you are or whatnot. Now, mind you, Pereira does have the kickboxing background, so he's obviously very, very comfortable fighting in front of a crowd and stuff like that. But it's always good to see somebody who you think is untouchable lose. Not to say anything bad, like I'm glad he lost or anything like that, but it's good to just know that, again, these guys are humans and they're not gods that people build them up to be. They're men just like I am. They bleed just like we do. They get sick on the weekends just like I do. They get the flu and whatnot, and they're no different than me or any other guy or you. They're no different. We're no different than anybody else. It's just the mentality that you have to have going in their training, and it's just, in my opinion, it's good to see a new champ happen. But I feel like I don't like the way that the UFC's it seems like they're going to be setting something up. I'm not really sure if they're going to have a rematch for that, or I saw Kamzat's already trying to jump on the fight thing because he's got wrestling. And I feel like anybody with, brown belt jiu-jitsu or a lick of like high school wrestling will be able to beat Pereira if they can get in and take him down, because those positions in the back that Izzy had him in, I feel like Izzy could have easily TKO'd him, easily arm triangled him, or easily have rear naked choked him in any of those situations. And I don't know why he didn't go for it, but hats off to Pereira for getting through it and finishing him. So,
excluding Kyle Daukaus, taking Kyle Daukaus out of the conversation, who would you say is the best middleweight in the world right now?
Hi, Robert Whittaker. I'm a big fan of Whittaker. I've always liked, his style, and I've always liked just the human that he is outside. He doesn't seem like he's any different inside of the cage than he is outside of the cage. He's also like a fighter's fighter. He's somebody who you have to appreciate because he's been through the losses and he's been through the wins, and he's a guy you just have to appreciate. And he's, like he said, I'd rather be what did he say? He said, I'd rather be a bricklayer myself as a bricklayer than somebody else that isn't somebody else or something. I don't know, but I like the way he said it. He was like, I'm going to be who I am. Then I'm not going to put a fake face on or anything like that. And I think that's the mentality I have. At least I try not to, put a face on that for the fans when the camera's on. That some of these guys do.
Couldn't agree more. If we talk about fighters, I asked Chris this question yesterday, and I want to ask you because there's a fighter that's very synonymous with Philadelphia in Rocky Balboa. What I would like to know, Kyle, is what is your favorite Rocky movie and why? I want to see if yours and Chris's match.
I guess the one when he fought Drago.
Rocky
that's kind of my most memorable one, I guess, just because the soundtrack was awesome. The training was awesome from training in the snow. It was good just knowing that they had a guy training in Russia just being on steroids pretty much, and Rocky's just working hard in the snow and whatnot. And it was, that was probably my favorite one. I'm going to be honest and say I don't really watch any of the other ones. That's kind of the only one I'm really familiar with. But I don't. This is a Philadelphia thing that I'm not really a fan of either. Is that people we built a statue of this guy, and he's a fake character. He's not a real guy. He's not really a real boxer or anything like that. I can understand if you did something for Joe Louis or Joe Frazier or somebody like that, because Joe Frazier is from Philly, or another fighter that was from Philly. But it's just he's an actor, and it's a movie thing, and people will get the kick out of it. So,
out of interest, Chris picked the first Rocky.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He said that's because it's the best story. It's an actual movie.
Okay.
If we turn the conversation back to you and your career, obviously the win on the 3rd of December is of prime importance, and I won't bore you with a prediction because I know what I'll get. Of course, it'll be a W. But we're at the end of November 2022 now, Kyle. Where would you like to be in your career come the end of November 2023? What are the goals for the next 12 months?
To be honest with you, dead seriously, this is my last fight on my UFC contract, so I have to win this fight, and then I have to make sure that I stay in the UFC after this. So that's my biggest concern is just making sure that I have a job come December 4th. You know what I mean? After the win, I get another contract from the UFC, and then we build from there. Ideally, I will be ranked by the end of by this time next year. but we'll see. My career has not gone any way that it possibly could have, that I could have imagined, obviously, when I got into the UFC because of how back and forth it's been. But I have that fire now than when I felt before I got to the UFC, and I feel like it's something that I needed to reflect on and something that I need to kind of get back to it. So yeah, a win on December 3rd, new contract, and then ranked by November of 2023.
Yeah, well, of course, as I said, then the win is of prime importance given the contract
Yes,
situation.
sir.
And with that being
Yep.
said, I wish you the best of luck for the 3rd of December, and thank you for taking the time to talk.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Before we finish, Kyle, how can people find you on social media and any sponsors you'd like to plug? The floor is yours for the last word.
Yeah, so I'm only on Twitter and Instagram, really. Just Kyle Daukaus is my thing. I have 2 sponsors right now that I'm working with. Performance Meal Prep has been sending me food. They're just a Philadelphia-based company that's been helping me just dial in on my nutrition and whatnot for this fight and weight cut that I have. And Fuel Hunt is another one that my brother and I have a collaboration with, of the Blue Collar Brawlers brand with them. We have like rash guards, T-shirts, stuff like that. And they also have other UFC fighters that they support as well. A lot of Philadelphia guys. They have Sean Brady, Andre Petrosky, Joe Pfeiffer, and I think maybe like 1 or 2 other guys as well.
Pat Sabatini, yeah. Jeremiah Wells.
Yeah, I think those guys are linked up with them. I'm not really sure, probably. But yeah, you go over there. They got a bunch of nice clothing as well. And yeah, I'm just very thankful for everybody at the gym that's been helping me. I'm very thankful for, my family, my wife, and just having a good life right now. So yeah.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKickMMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.